We are filming today for Hamilton College, and we're developing a jazz archive. We are blessed to have with us Bobby Watson, incredible saxophone artist, going to perform for us tonight. Bobby, tell us a little bit about how you got started playing the sax. How old were you?
Well, I started in music when I was 10 years old. My father, he made his living flying airplanes and worked for the FAA. In fact, he's one of the first blacks to become an inspector, the ones that go in and get the black box when a plane crashes in the country. But the way he worked his way through ground school, he tuned pianos, repaired instruments, and he played saxophone, plays the tenor. So I heard him playing at night when he wants to unwind a little bit, and although he never pursued it as a profession, there was always music in the house, and always a piano, sometimes two pianos if he's working on them. And I knew from a young age I wanted to play music. And so first chance I got, you know, I was bugging my parents, and when time came to start public school, man, they got me a clarinet. And in fact, the year before, I started piano when I was in 4th grade. And so that was my first instrument I started on. And I took piano lessons all through high school, and as well as being in the school band on clarinet. And when I got to be about in 10th grade and 9th grade, I started messing with the saxophone, and like my father, so I started playing a tenor. And maybe about my junior year, about 1970, I started playing alto. And that was more close to my voice. I have a high voice, and it just seemed natural from the clarinet. The keys were closer. It didn't feel as big in the hand, and I felt more natural with that one, so I gravitated toward alto. And my first experience playing in public was in the church. I played piano in church, and then when I started playing clarinet, I remember my first performance was Battle Hymn of the Republic.
Okay.
I remember that, and you know, amen, amen, as it was over. And so I've always been connected to playing in the church, mainly.
I want to ask you something about that. Two things. You know, a lot of African-American artists have a church background. Many of them started in church, no matter what they do later. But how did it feel, especially like when there were older people in the church that say, yeah, I like that, and they say, amen, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it felt good. They were giving you encouragement, you know, and that's your first feeling of playing and getting gratification back, you know? And that's really what the whole thing, I think, about music, when you're playing and the audience lets you know. And I remember, because years before I had enough nerve to stand up in front, I'd seen, you know, the older people would get up and sing an A and B selection, you know, and then they would like, you know, so they would, you know, move him, you know. Sometimes they would sing, and they would really sing good, you know, and then they would just move the whole congregation. So that would be something. And to watch my father, he would play in the church, and when he played a saxophone and get into it, you know, playing Precious Lord or something, and then just everybody would go, yes, go ahead and say it, Watson, go ahead and say it, you know. And so it's like you knew that they were listening and they're with you, and I think that must have been part of the intoxication too.
Let me ask you one other thing. You know, we talk to a lot of jazz artists, and in their own ways, in their own words, many of them confirm that there's a type of spirituality in this music. In other words, the music is more than just the technical ability to move fast over the keys.
Yes. It's, I believe that it's a language, and that the notes and all the things you learn, the exercises and the calisthenics over the years, are basically just the framework of the language. And once you learn how to manipulate that, like the alphabet and sentence structure, and that's comparable in music as the different modes and all the intervals, which are the building blocks of the music. That's what you are able to pick, you know, like if you do a rising line, that brings a certain feeling, or if you drop your line that gives a certain feeling of maybe melancholy. So I believe that it's a language, and I know that Herb Jeffries, I had a chance to work with him when I was working with Panama Francis up in the Rainbow Room. And Herb Jeffries came in for a month from Paris, and he told me a lot of stories because he knew Sidney Bechet. So I figured I was getting pretty close-hand information about the history of the music, and he says that during the jam sessions, Sidney Bechet would be playing, and he would say, "Now I'm going to call my dog." And he'd be in a club, he'd play something, or I don't know what it was, a sound, and his dog would come in, you know. And I think it relates to when they took the drums away when we arrived in America, that the whole language of the drums, because as you know, the drums were used for communication. So I believe that that sublimated into the instruments, and so this communication is sort of the underlying thing about the instruments, because I feel that there's something that, you know, when I'm blowing, I get that something comes, I get something off your chest, you know, as you're playing, that you really can't put into words. But when you're playing that instrument, after you're done, you feel satisfied, like if you've said something you needed to say that day. You know, and I know depending on how I feel, my instrument lets me know what kind of day it's going to be. That's for sure. I mean, that's my barometer. When I pick that horn up, I know if it's going to be a good day, or how well I'm feeling, or how well rested I am, or how tired I am. And I think that's the thing that I try to get over to the students, you know, is you learn this. Now, what do you want to say? What do you want to play? Because the whole fun thing about jazz was that, you know, you're not supposed to do what's there. You know, I'm going to read the part, but after I got the part, I'm going to start adding notes and changing this. And I'm going to take it the way I hear it, you know. And so it's like, man, you know, why do you want to play something the same way this guy did it, you know? Simple things like this, you know. Or I used to sit in front of the TV and I would memorize, I'd just play along with the theme songs from TV, you know, and just use your ear. Things like this, you know, are certain things that guide you in this music, you know.
Tell us about, you know, some of the things that you're saying are fabulous because they're insights, personal experience that you have into the sound. But you've also studied composition and theory, haven't you?
Yes, yeah, I did.
Tell us about your time of study.
Oh, I studied with a man, his name was Clifton Williams, and he's very big in the band, concert band field. He has several things published. We played him when I was in high school. So when I got the chance to study with him, that's one of the reasons I went to the University of Miami, was to study with Clifton Williams. And he taught me as a composer, not as a jazz composer. He said, I want you to be a good composer. So that way, whatever you want to do, whether it be jazz or classical, you at least have the craft. And one of the first tests he gave us was, he wrote a bunch of emotions, a list. He made love, hate, boredom, inebriation, different lists of emotions, and anger, fright, fear, and you'd have to write 8 bars, no harmony, just the melody. And he said that you would be able to get that across on the piano. He would sit there with his back to the wall, and he would pick one. He'd have the list, and he would just play, and he'd have to guess what it was. And what you had at your disposal was like the rhythmic, how fast it is, the attack, the dynamics, the direction of notes. And that was his test to see that if you had a gift for composition. And if you got at least half, you're in the ballpark. You know, and that was his method, you know, and that was very exciting for me, and I never forgot that, and I use that because, you know, if you're going to do love, say you want to have a note going down, or pride, that was one of them. So pride, like, you know, so that was like, you have to think what is going to give pride, or boredom was like, dun, 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 like that, you know, and so you would have to guess, and depending on the value of the notes and how hard you hit the notes, you find that those are your tools in composition, that you manipulate the notes by way of that, and then you, by doing that, you manipulate people's emotions. And it's a very exciting thing, so that's how I write now. I don't write, sometimes the chords come first, and then, but most of the time I go for the melody. and I keep a little journal. If I hear something, I'll write it down, and then I'll get back to it later. You know, you may have to change a note here or there, but basically, you know, if something comes to you, you write that down. He used to say, like, your divine inspiration. Divine inspiration doesn't come that often, and usually when it does, it comes in 4 bars. You know, that's it. You know, so you're gonna have to. You can't. You know, doesn't really last. Very rarely do you hear a song and it's complete.
Right.
You know, I've written a few songs like that where it just comes so fast you can't hardly get it down on paper. The whole song. I can probably count that on one hand. But most of my songs, you know, you have to toil over them, and I got maybe 4 bars of divine inspiration. And with the craft, you stretch that into a whole song.
So 4 bars of inspiration, and the rest of the tune of perspiration.
That's right. There's only one person wrote in pen, and that was Mozart. Everybody else used a pencil, you know. So I had to realize that. You know, Beethoven, he used a pencil. So I said, hey, you know, you write it, you throw it away, and you have to, it's perspiring.
You know, that's fabulous that you have these combinations of skills. Am I correct in saying that many saxophone players say that the clarinet is a more difficult instrument?
Yeah.
And if you start on that, switching to clarinet is easier.
Yeah. So going to saxophone, you mean? If you start on clarinet, you mean?
Yes.
Then going to saxophone is easier? Yes, it is. The only adjustment you have to make is the embouchure, because the clarinet is more of a tight smile, and the saxophone is more of a frown. So it took me a few years to make that, but most definitely, because the clarinet, your fingers are the pads. So you have to be really exact. And then it's like I say, if you push the octave key, it's not an octave key, it goes up a 12th. So you have a whole different set of fingerings once you push that button. And with the saxophone, you just push it and it goes up an octave. So it's a lot easier, you know.
Tell us about playing with one of the absolute masters of jazz, an institution within himself. Tell us about Art Blakey.
Yeah, he was, well, when I was with him, first of all, I was with him 4.5 years, and so I just hung out with him. I didn't try to tell him nothing. You know, and I see a lot of young kids, they don't know how to keep their mouth shut. You know, that's the biggest thing you gotta learn how to do. Keep your ears open and your mouth shut. You know, ears open, mouth shut. And that's what I did with Art, and he appreciated that. If Art asked me my opinion on something, I would give it. He would say, what do you think about this, Bobby? Well, I think this, but I would never try to tell him anything of my own personal experiences, because I figured, what can I tell him? He's been played with Bird and everybody, and so there's nothing that I'm going to tell him. My experiences aren't relevant to this man unless he wants to know. The only thing that's relevant to this man is my performance on the bandstand, and for me trying to be the best jazz messenger I can be and to make sure that he's happy. So I took that as an apprenticeship for 4 years, just to want to lay that groundwork. So with that in mind, I hung out with him everywhere. After the gig, I went home with him to his room. I called him first thing in the morning to check in, and where are you going? You going to eat? I'm going with you. So for 4.5 years, I was under his armpit. You know, and other guys, you know, they split after the gig. I went with him. Because the thing about Art is, it what scared a lot of people is that you knew that if he loved you, and the more he got to know you, at one point he's gonna bust you on something, because he could read you. He'd look at you, he could read you. He knew your weaknesses and your strengths on the instrument and in your personality. And you being around him, you knew that. I don't know, it's just a feeling that you knew he was looking right through you. And so that's scary, because no one wants to get criticized. But if you're gonna, one of the prices you have to pay to hang out with a man like this is you're gonna get criticized. At some point, he's gonna tell you what he really thinks about you and what he really thinks about your playing, and you know it. And so a lot of guys would get away. But I stayed up there under the hammer, you know, and every so often he'd tell me, Bob, you're not swinging. You know, we wouldn't say it like that, Bobby, you're not swinging, you know. You sound like you're playing out of an exercise book, you know. And, you know, that's pretty shocking, you know. But he's telling the truth, and you have to think about it. Or he would say, you're overblowing your horn. You're out of tune. You're blowing too hard. Just relax, you know. And those are the things that helped me, because I took it to heart, and I was at the age where I was, like, open to that. And I didn't have a block up in my mind, so he could work with me, you know. I was like putty in his hands. But at the same time, you have to submit yourself to that. So it's a sense of submission is where you gain your strength. Because if a man loves you and you submit to him, you only got to do it one time. Because you'll learn, and then you got that. And then the next time you have to submit to something else, but if you do that long enough, you'll cover everything. And you see people who have a lot of resistance in their heart to criticism. And you know that they're never going to learn and get past a certain point, because all the great ones, when you're being around a person like Art, you realize how they talk to each other. They were brutally honest. And they always told the truth the way they saw it. And you have to think about it, because they really don't want to say nothing to you. And the only reason they would say something to you is if they loved you. If they didn't love you, they'd say, yeah, baby, you sound good.
Mm-hmm.
They tell you what you want to hear.
But they just let you go on.
They let you go on because they didn't left what you want to hear. You couldn't take the truth. I said, well, you know, you really, you know, kind of repeating yourself. That Art Blakey's a jerk, you know. So, and they know that. So they can see the ones that really want to learn. And they, at first I used to cry. I was like, man, why are you talking to me like this? He goes, man, if I didn't love you, I wouldn't say nothing to you. So I thought about that. And I would wait for those. And I would get worried when he stopped talking to me, because I knew he must be mad. You know, I wouldn't want that. I want to keep that door open. And man, we hung out and had a great time. He's like a child, man. He's like Peter Pan. You know, he never grew up. Just got older, you know. He said the only reason he knew how old he was when he looked in the mirror. You know, when he woke up, to him, he was still a young man. And he ran us in the ground, man. We'd be going traveling sometimes 14 hours a day. And I look at him, and he looked like he's half dead. And he's twice our age, and I go, man, I know when we get to the gig, he's probably going to cancel. Because I was dead. I didn't feel like playing no saxophone. I had never worked this hard in my life, so I just couldn't imagine making any music after the day we've had. Man, shoot, he'd get up there, and we'd play for 2 hours straight. That's when he played the hardest, you know, and he'd drive us, man. You know, we couldn't keep up with him, and he had love, you know. And he'd get up on that stage, and we might have been hanging out all day, but when he got on the stage, he'd get this look, and he didn't see nobody. He'd just be into them drums. And he'd just be, you just feel this joy that he was getting from him playing the drums, and he wasn't depending on nobody else in the band to make him happy. It's like, either you come along with me or get left behind. And you're going, thinking about how tired you are. I haven't ate, and my lip hurts, and I read. And you look over here, and this man's going, right? With a big smile on his face. And you're going, what's wrong with me? I better get with it, you know? Because it's like, it was very selfish, you know? He got up there, and it's like, Art, we're supposed to be tired. I mean, you know, he's like just burning over there, because that's what brings him his joy. The bandstand was a sanctuary for him. It's like he says, if you have an argument all day, you leave all your arguments and disagreements at the edge of the bandstand. 'Cause when you step on that bandstand, that's an altar. It's a very sacred place, and it's our sanctuary. So we did. We had sometimes mean days, you know. We were mad at him and everything, you know. But when we got up there, he'd look us right in the eye and smile. And say, blow, baby, blow. And you know, you couldn't avoid eye contact. And he would know, because on that bandstand, you got to look each other in the eye. You got to be able to look every man in the eye and say, I got your back, baby. I got you, man. I got you. Don't worry, baby. I got you. You know, it's like that, you know.
Teamwork.
Teamwork. And when you get off the stage, go your separate way later for him. When you get on that stage, you got to be able to look each other in the eye.
Got to be able to do it.
And that's when you knew and you're very sensitive to that. When a guy gets on the stage, you could tell when they're still carrying something in their heart from the day. So I became very sensitive to that, and Art taught me the value of that, you know, because this was direct lineage from Bird, you know, and I knew I was hearing it from direct lineage. And I took everything he said to heart.
Oh, that's awesome. That's wonderful. Let me ask you something else about this teamwork. You know, jazz is a music where every player improvises, not just the player that's playing a solo. There's levels of improvisation going on in the company.
Absolutely.
You know, and if it doesn't work as a team, it doesn't work.
Absolutely.
Talk to us about that.
Well, it's like when they give you a piece of music, say, for instance, the composer may have put certain rhythms on there or certain voicings, or like when I pass out bass parts, I say, please don't play that. This is just an idea. I'm not a bass player, so please don't play what I wrote. But just give you a general feel. Now I want you to take it and do your thing with it. And the drums, same with the drums, you know. You got some guys that say, I know I want you to play this. Tin, 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 tin. I said, man, please, you got a great drummer here. What are you trying to tell him? Because when I first got with Art, see, we did Gypsy Folktales, and I had been in the band 2 weeks, and suddenly we're making a record, and I had a couple of songs, because my composition teacher says, you're probably going to get work as a player before you will as a composer. So whatever ensemble you're in, try to have something ready. Because there might be an extra 10 minutes at the end of the rehearsal, so you can say, excuse me, would you mind reading this down? So I was ready. So when he says, it had just recorded a couple Walter Davis tunes, and he looks over at me, who got something? And he knew I did. So I pulled out 2 tunes, you know. It was Time Will Tell and Hawkman. And I pulled them out, and I passed out the parts, and I had the drum parts. I was just out of college, and it was all neat. And I said, here, Art, here's your part, and I kind of want kind of an Elvinish type feel, and I want this kind of thing over here, broken time. He's going, oh, okay. Threw it on the floor. We have threw it on the floor, man. I'm like, okay. Last night, my first lesson, I said, he goes, run it down. So he listened to it for about 3 or 4 times. Once he had it down, he goes, let me try it. And he put this whole nother beat on it and took it somewhere else. And my eyes said, okay, the little light bulb went off, you know? How stupid I am trying to tell Art Blakey to play it kind of Elvinish. You know, I mean, he's an institution of himself, Elvin, and so is Art. And you don't, and you know, if you got Art, you take Art. You don't want to, you want Elvin, go get Elvin.
That's like them telling Ali to box like Frazier.
Yeah, you know, you want me, you got me. And so I never wrote drum parts out again, and I still don't to this day. I'll give a drum part, I may give him the trumpet part. And so that's why this improvisation you're saying begins immediately when you have artists that are in that spirit of creating, so that when they're comping, they're actually playing little counter melodies, and they're just voice leading, and all the chords, if you just take away all the chords and just listen to what's on top, you should hear little counter melodies flowing behind you. And then the bass, if you really just isolate the bass, you'll hear how he's composing on his bass lines. His melodies as he's walking, that's how they're able to keep walking all them bars. They're improvising. They're soloing on the bass. And so it's like everything is in motion. If you got guys that's playing the stuff over and over the way he wrote it, that's not jazz. You know, and it's the hardest thing is to get people to realize that you're improvising from the word go. You know, you pick the voicings, you pick the rhythm. When you want to hit it, the drums, you guys hook up on something behind the soloist to push him on, you know? And that's the whole thing about it. It's team ball. You know, you pass it. When you hear the guy go over to the cymbal, you can almost hear it coming. You know, he'll do a roll. It's like you can, when you turn in the corner, you know, you put the signal light on about 50 feet before. So you hear the signal light come on, and you hear him slow down to make the curve.
Right.
So you hear these things in music. So you as a soloist, you're going, oh, okay, they're going to curve, and you're like right with them. And they see, or the same thing, they see, when they see my shoulder start going like this, you know, I start stomping my foot, you know, they go, oh, there he goes. You know, they start feeding me a little stuff, you know, and we all just move out together. You know, it's the hardest thing that Art taught me. He said, when you start to blow, man, you got to trust the guys around you. And you all move out together, and we build, you know, just like that.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Tell us, get us inside of one of your original compositions. What goes through your mind when you write a tune, and what parameters do you exploit to try to capture the voice of Bobby Watson in a jazz composition?
Well, capturing my voice is really not too hard, because as I discovered on the saxophone, as much as I try to sound like Cannonball and Bird, I sound like Bob. So the thing is to accept who you are. That's the hardest thing. Once you accept who you are, then it's really easy, because I work with Sam Rivers, and he's avant-garde, and he's in his 60s, but as he used to remind me, when he played bebop, that was avant-garde. So he's always been avant-garde. And we were on the train one time over in Europe, and we were with this group of 10 saxophones called the Winds of Manhattan. And he said, let me show you something, because I was watching, he'd be just writing without no piano. And sometimes he'd cut this page and put it over here, and he'd just be writing without a score. And he says, I said, how do you do that? He says, here, take the piece of paper. He said, write you a line. So I wrote one line. He said, now write another line, anything you want. He says, now, and I wrote about 5 lines. He says, now if you hand this out, you pick the instruments and give it to him, it's going to sound like Bobby Watson. No matter what you do, it's going to sound like you, because you are the creator. And so the creator, there's no mistakes. So whatever you do, you just sound like you can't escape who you are. And through repetition, you start to see. So I don't really make any efforts to do it. It's just that I can't escape myself as much as I would like to. You know, as much as I would like to write some stuff like Duke Ellington or things, other great arrangers and composers. There are people that do that I admire them, and what they've done is lifted off the voicings of Duke. And then when they write stuff, it sounds like Duke and it puts it on a certain level, but that's not them. So for me, like when I do a big band chart, I don't worry about it. I just write it and I fill in the blanks and I hook it up and then I play it. And then there you go, it's me. And then I'm very happy with myself and I don't really worry about that, you know. And again though, that was going back to art. You know, I was very lucky because the things I'm saying now, they're not all my ideas. I'm a dummy. I'm one of the dumbest guys I know. But I just have great teachers. I've been very lucky to have these people just come through my life and take an interest in me and say, come over here, man, let me show you something. You know? And I've always been like, okay. You know, because I figure like this, if he really wants to help me, then I'm going to get something out of it. If he's just trying to show me how much he knows, I'm going to learn that too. I'm going to say, okay, he's just trying to look big in front of me, and I'll listen to him one time. But that way, the next time he comes around, I don't have to listen to him no more. So, again, when you submit yourself to who you are, and you submit yourself to input, you know, and you find yourself much quicker, and because you can't escape who you are. So your strength, your weaknesses become your strength. You actually, you know, and you just exploit that too, you know.
I want to say one other thing is your rhythm section players did a marvelous little workshop with our students this afternoon, and they did something. I want you to make a little comment on this. They were playing, and I mean, we knew our kids when they couldn't keep up with that. But I would make your rhythm section play, then I would make one of our students take a solo. And someone would say, no. And I said, jump in there, get in there. You know, and then the guitar player said the whole idea is to jump in over your head.
That's right.
Because that's how you learn. Talk to us about that.
Well, they always said that you have to hang with that fast company. And you're right, you know, you get in with players that are better than you, they'll make you play some stuff you didn't know you could play. And that's, you know, it's just because, and by contrast, players that are not so good can bring your level down. And the thing I learned from doing a lot of clinics and playing with a lot of high school players is my level definitely does drop. But it's okay, because I've learned how to play on different levels and still be happy. And that's the thing you learn, not to let them bring you down, because you still have to keep a level of excellence. That's what Art said. Some days you're here, some days you're here, some days you're here, but never go below there. And that's what you have to learn, to keep your own level straight. But I learned that from playing with players who were better than me and who were consistently, night after night after night. And it's like, I guess, in basketball, you know, they may have a hurt, you know, they be hurting all the time. I mean, even guys that, you know, never miss a game, they hurt. They play in pain, their knees hurt, and they get calluses on their fingers from handling that ball so much. And people who bowl, man, they have to tape their fingers. And you're going to pay a price. You pay a price in having yourself in contact with something that's not, you know, that's unnatural, with the floor or whatever. And you're pounding up and down that hardwood floor is going to do something to your knees, you know. Because it's not really what it was made for.
Right.
But the human body is something how we adapt to things that are challenges in front of us, you know, to play the horn or to play a bass, and you develop calluses because that's a reaction to pain. So your body goes, whoop, whoop, send a bunch of cells over there, you know, and you build up chops, and then it becomes, it looks natural, but it's really unnatural. And that's why when people pick up an instrument at first and they're going, man, this is difficult. I mean, well, that's because you have all these kind of hidden muscles and other things that people can't see, you know. You're Charles Atlas here and here, or you might be Charles Atlas here, you know, where you don't really actually look physically strong, but, you know, and where it counts, you're like Charles Atlas, you know. And I don't know if I've digressed or what the point I'm trying to make is that this deep company, you know, seeing other guys play through pain, play through fatigue, and then and it's such a thrill, you hit a note and finally you get a piano player to just hit something that just compliments you. It's just sort of like, oh wow, and then it pushes you on out further. And that's really, like, you're absolutely right, you know, you should always jump at the chance to play with people who are better than you. I always try to get the strongest cats around me, you know, and guys that have something that I don't have, because it keeps me on my toes and it keeps me honest. I mean, for me to be the best cat in the band would be so boring. I don't think I could make it. I don't know if I could make it 1 month, you know, just having me be the top all the time. But it's so nice that when Harold, the drummer, or Victor Lewis, or all the guys I've had over the years, when they turn it out, man, it just inspires you and takes you to another level, you know.
I got to stick in the sides in here.
Yeah.
I love the way Victor plays.
Oh, everybody does. Yeah.
That's for you, Victor.
Yeah.
Oh, he's so great. So great.
Oh, he's this. Because he submits to the music.
Uh-huh. I'm going to ask you one thing, and I know we got to get you out here because you got to get something to eat and get dressed and maybe detox a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But where is jazz going? Give me some places where it can go, or the possibilities that you see in it.
Well, I think we have to stop categorizing. Like now, you know, I'm doing this electric thing, and it's because I grew up doing it. But also I play jazz. And so you're gonna hear my thing, it'll be a little more aggressive than what they call that soft jazz, because we're really up there still trying to mash and play. But that's not all I do. Like I mentioned earlier, I play in the church, so I'd like to do a gospel record at some point. And here's another thing I see, what really has changed the dynamics of the music. People like Lou Donaldson and Barry Harris, during that generation, a lot of them just started going to Europe, maybe 10 years ago, for the first time in their life. Meanwhile, I'm 42 right now. I've been to Europe maybe 70, 80 times, and all over the world. And so it used to be in the 40s and the 50s, and maybe up early 60s, when they say you do the circuit. And the circuit was basically the country. You know, you do the circuit, you go down south, you go to Chicago, and that was the circuit that all the jazz guys traveled, except for, you know, Dexter and Johnny Griffin, they went to Europe, Don Byas and Coleman Hawkins, all them guys went back to Europe for a time. And, but basically the main circuit that everyone traveled was in America. So what you reflected off of, and then when you did get a chance to go to Europe, you didn't really concern yourself with the locals, as they would say. You didn't really want to hear the local musicians, but they were all coming to hear you, because you had jazz, and you were there because you had something that they couldn't find in Europe. So you tended to be a little arrogant, maybe, and maybe a little closed-minded about hearing some local musicians, because I found that there are virtuosos that play their music in every country. And a virtuoso is a virtuoso. And so when you meet you meet someone who has this level of talent, of skill, and he's playing Greek songs, and the bouzouki players or what have you, clarinet players from Romania, something like this, really wild stuff. And you have to open your ears to that. And so they want to hook up with you, because now it's 1996, all through the 70s, things started happening. Now in Europe, they have people who knew Coleman Hawkins, and they're the grandfathers of European jazz and can play. And now you have young kids over there in Germany and all over, France, whatever. They can play. They can really play. You cannot say that jazz is American anymore. Jazz started in America, particularly by black people, but it now has spread throughout the world and has become a proven formula, and has transcended all racial, sexual, and religious nationalistic lines, that if you submit to the music, you will have success and be able to get to what you're saying inside. Because there are young kids from other countries that understand what this music is about. So now, when me and my generations that are come behind me, when we go to Europe, we have to keep our eyes open, because we're not special as terms of we're not rare birds, because Hans will come over here and he might blow some stuff and blow you away if you ain't careful. So it ain't about just being American blowing your horn and you ain't gonna have any competition, because you got guys coming out of the woodwork all over the world. So what I'm trying to say is where the music is going, it is taking on the international stage. And that means that the jazz musician has an obligation to bring all kinds of things into his jazz. So I feel that the jazz musicians that are going to be important in years to come are going to be the ones that give you a variety of colors, a variety of sounds, who are able to do a variety of musics, not just swinging anymore. Because you got the Latino stuff is very strong, and Cubans are coming here now, very strong. So in the past, there were good players in rhythm sections that could play good jazz, good bebop, but couldn't get with the Latin thing. And then you start to have jazz guys as we're starting to realize, bass players, that hey, you got to go boom, 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 and get into that and learn clave. And you start to get this crossover, as they call it, or fusion, as they call it. What do they mean by that? You know what I mean? It's just the world is getting smaller, and people are able to travel, you know, and travel is cheaper. So you have a thing that all cultures have this level of virtuosity in their culture. So as a jazz musician, as I feel that, as Art used to say, as a jazz musician, it's the highest form of performance on a musical instrument, I'm not going to back down from any type of music. Because I'm a jazz man, and I'm supposed to be able to play anything. So it's up to me to get with it, you know? So I feel that this is the mindset for the future, is that you should be able to swing and play the bop, but you also should be able to jump in there with some salsa, jump in there with some funk, read your ass off, and play some classical music, you know, and play some show tunes. I'll play some dinner music. I do weddings, you know. I try to do it all, you know. And that's what you see, the difference between the older guys and the younger guys. The younger guys can play everything. They're into James Brown. It's not just a superficial, oh, I'm going to play some funk, let's put a backbeat on it, you know? Like when the older cats maybe try to cross over. And that's only because of a generational thing, you know? And if you have to keep your eyes on the youth and what's coming behind you and take that and incorporate it, because when I watch old films of Duke Ellington and you look out in the audience, it's young people. But my problem is all these young people that were young in 1959, it's 1995, they're coming to my gigs wanting me to do 1959. Where are the young people? I want the young people. This is what I learned from Art. You got to have the young people there. And once you know you're tapped into the young folks, you know you're on the right track. So this is the thing I see for the future of the music, is that we have an obligation to sit in and deal with the rap, deal with the DJs, deal with all that, because we have the skill and the science and should have the mindset to take whatever comes.
Listen, this has been absolutely marvelous. What an answer. I want to say this, look straight into the camera and say this. This has been one of the most articulate statements that we've had on where jazz may be going in the future. You've heard this from Bobby Watson. And that means all you students that are interested in jazz, you literally have to be eclectic. Learn to do it all. You just heard it from one of the masters. That's great. Listen, we got to let you go.
Thank you so much.
Get something to eat and detox. This has been absolutely fabulous. And this ends our interview with Bobby Watson for Hamilton Jazz Archives. Yeah, baby.